Hi, everyone. I'm Wendy Calhoun. I'm from Los Angeles, California. I want to thank you so much for allowing me to come here and share with you today. You know, it's funny because we're here to talk about work, but I consider my work play. Okay, so here we go. I'm a storyteller. Some call me a television drama writer producer because my credits include some primetime shows you may have heard of or seen. Shows like Life. Whoa, go back. Take me back. I'm not at that point in my career yet. Okay, here we go. Shows called Life on NBC, Justified was on FX. I also wrote for Revenge that was on ABC as well as Nashville. And most recently, a show called Empire that's currently on Fox. So I actually don't think of myself as just a television writer. I think of myself as a content creator. My ideas aren't really limited to just what you see on your television screens, which is going to be helpful, right, going forward in the future. My resume includes crafting narratives for video games like Electronic Arts' Battlefield Hardline. And I'm currently writing a new series I created, as well as a virtual reality short that I'm also going to direct. So I adore new technology, adore it. And speaking here at Google, a mecca for new technology to me, a place where I think of innovation meeting imagination, is really an honor, really. So when most people think of a writer at work, they see a lone individual typing stories on a laptop while drinking endless cups of coffee, right? Now, while that may be true for some writers, it's only about a quarter of how TV writer-producers like myself actually work. We spend another large percentage of our lives, a good 50% of our workday, in conference rooms surrounded by whiteboards and index cards and other grumpy writers. Now, we brainstorm and we share and we consider ideas with other writers on our team for whatever series that we're creating. We work as a collective. And yeah, there are probably a lot of pots of coffee brewing nearby because some cliches are just real, right? But working in a writer's room is very much like going to a dinner party. It can be fun, it can be explosive, it can be grueling, but when it's most productive, the work feels like play. And some say that organizing writers is about as easy as herding cats. So every room is different, depending upon the personalities of the staff and the practices of the room leader. I'm going to share with you some tricks of the trade with you. The goal is to get your creative room to thrive and build something more comprehensive than any one person's idea. Just so you know, that's the Empire Writer staff right there, season 1. And those are some of our stories that you've already heard on those cards. Okay. Before athletic teams practice or play a game, they usually warm up. Same goes for writers. I like to warm up my meetings with a lighthearted discussion that encourages everyone to participate, as well as listen. So let's warm up. I'm going to ask a question, and y'all holler out an answer. Here we go. What color best describes how you feel right now? Ooh, I heard a lot of orange. I like that. Do you know the name of the person sitting next to you? Oh, well, that just blows out the next question. Because I thought if you said no to that question, I was going to have you introduce yourself. But obviously, we are way progressive in this room. Okay. Now that it's a little less chilly in here, right? Warm-ups are great. We start every day in a writer's room with a warm-up, basically. We want to get everyone expressing themselves early. It sets the tone. There are no right or wrong answers to a warm-up. Who's going to tell you don't feel orange, right? You know, and this lets us know that what we're talking about are opinions or simple facts. Warm-ups get the energy flowing, and it creates a safer place for sharing. If you're leading the room, one of the things you need to do is assess everybody that's there. You try not to let any one person dominate the discussion, just like the last person said, with lots of information. I'm saying the exact same thing. That happens in writer's room all the time. Someone will run away with the topic. You gotta make sure that that person gets what they need to say down and then move on. And you also want to make sure that people who don't seem engaged, you're encouraging them to speak up. You want to let the quiet ones feel comfortable enough to be heard. Now, after the room's warmed up, if you're the leader, and you'll lay out the agenda for the day. All right, today we're going to figure out a way for a cookie to get back at Lucius, whatever it's going to be. And you want to be, as the leader, you want to go first. Just do it. Be the first one to pitch an idea. She is going to come in with a pillow and she is going to smother him. Whatever it is. This is my life, seriously. After you've said your pitch, you keep it brief, and now you open up the floor and you want everyone else in the room to now start to give their ideas. Now, many rooms that I've worked in follow improvisation's yes and rule. Now, this rule requires everybody in the room to listen carefully to the idea that's being presented and say yes first, or agree with what's valid in that idea, before adding and, a new thought that builds upon the one before yours. I learned yes and while I was studying improv at the Groundlings and the Upright Citizens Brigade. I highly recommend improvisational training for anyone who wants to learn how to develop sharp listening skills. I am also open to something that I've invented called yes or. Yes or means that you want to acknowledge what is valid in the idea that just came before yours, but you also want to introduce an alternative to that idea, or encourages individuals to go beyond the first idea. I've discovered that the first idea is usually the obvious one, right? That's the cliche. That's the one most people agree with because they've seen it before or they've heard it before. It was on CSI last year, and therefore it must be good, right? Or, yes, or, I've seen bolder creativity blossom when the group brainstorms on alternatives to the ideas. So if you present a room with an assignment at the beginning of the day, what is Raina gonna say to Juliet when she sees her walk in with Deacon? You wanna remind them to bring alts to the table. Bring me 5 different storylines for that. And that's especially true when you're producing on set. Alts are lifesavers in productions. You need alt lines, you need alt reaction shots, you need alt ways for the actors and the directors to add movement to a scene. They're lifesavers. So we already start to think that way when we're in the room. I learned the basics of yes or actually while I was working as an assistant. I worked for a man named Tim Burton. He's a feature film director. You may have heard of him. And when Tim would challenge me with a creative problem, he liked to be able to pick from a list of viable options. If I presented him with a single idea, which that would usually be the idea that I assumed was the best choice, he would ask, what else have you got? What else you got? And this required me to think of alternatives. It gave me creativity. It gave me diversity with my creativity. And speaking of diversity, while working on a team of writers, it is important for us to check our biases and assumptions at the door. Don't assume you know what people can contribute because of who they are at first glance. During my adventures in Hollywood, many assumed because I am black and female that I only wanted to explore ideas specific to what they thought was my point of view. Others assumed that I was an arbiter of taste for all blacks and women, which was wrong and frustrating. It is impossible for one person to carry the torch for an entire swath of any race or gender. Truth is, right on, my imagination is not limited to my life experience. Like any seasoned writer, I use research to expand my stories. All right, here's a few of the guys from Justified, right? Just so you know, I was the only woman on that staff for the first 2 seasons. I was on the staff for the first 2 seasons, and my favorite contribution was a very special character named Mags Bennett. Now, at first glance, some of the writers in the rooms, they assumed that I would only pitch on the stories about the female leads. But the showrunner or lead writer of that show, Graham Yost, encouraged me to mine my passage for humanizing criminals like Boyd Crowder, played by Walton Goggins. I think I got a picture of him there. Here he is. Now, between the first and second seasons, I worked to expand my knowledge of the show's location. I flew myself to Kentucky. I met with Lexington Marshals. This is by myself. I went on ride-alongs with the state police in Harlan. It didn't feel like work. I had a lot of fun. It was during a ride-along that I was asked about local personalities. And I started just wanting to know, tell me about people in Harlan. And I was told about a real-life bootlegger who happened to be a revered matriarch in Harlan. She sold liquor illegally in the dry county, but also paid for several of Harlan's brightest students to get their college degrees. Now, some of those students became her lawyers, representing her in court. Oh, yeah. Others served on juries, which made it impossible to ever convict her. I researched her. I developed a new character, incorporating elements from a fictional male personality in one of Elmore Leonard's short stories. I suspected the guys in the room might balk at the idea of an older white female being a formidable foe for our gunslinging male hero. Because I had a real personality and research to back up my pitch, they were open to the idea and helped me develop it. And that result was Mags, the season 2 major antagonist brought to life by Margot Martindale, who won an Emmy for her incredible portrayal. So, thank you. All to Margot. In conclusion, television writing is a group sport. We engage everyone, we respect the speaker, we yes-and them, we yes-or to go beyond our first ideas. And we try to check our biases of ourselves and our fellow writers at the door. We offer research to support our ideas. We actively listen to each other. We evaluate our pitches and set goals for new ones. It's not easy. We're cats. But it is rewarding, especially when audiences respond to our efforts. Most importantly, the work soars in a writer's room when it's treated like play. And I hope my sharing helps you discover more ways to have productive play in your work groups too. Thank you.